Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Anna Abramowitz, and today I have a special guest. She's one of my successful students from the accelerator program, Talvi. How are you, Talvi?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you very much.
How did I say your last name? Was it proper?
It was a perfect pronunciation. So I did
Guys.
not see this actually coming. So I was like, ooh.
I was like, yes, I practiced a little bit.
Ooh.
So one of the things that I really wanted you guys to get from this interview that we're going to begin very shortly is Talvi is one of those people who is a one-person rock star department. Basically, I call those developers like soup to nuts. She goes from basically inception, right? Just coming up with the ideas, doing all the research, talking to all the people, all the way to build and launch and test. So no small feat. And so today what I really wanted to focus on is her experience designing, her experience talking to people, some of the challenges that she faced, some of the lessons that she's learned, and maybe some inspiration that you guys can get from her journey to begin your own, and also any lessons that she wants to share with us as far as advice, basically for anybody getting started with this, because I think it's a little different than what your usual projects are. So, all right, Talvi, tell me, what do you do? Who's your target learner? What are you trying to achieve? What do you do?
Right. So I am taking care of the customer service team in our company, and the main learner is dealing then on daily basis with the customers over the phone, and so my work is in between finding how to get the procedures over. But when we talk about customer service, it's not only about the procedures, but it's also the interaction between people, and that's where the scenario-based learning came in, and that's, I think, how I kind of looked up for you. And yeah, and that's, I think we kind that actually, I think that really led me to you, or like I started to look into like how to bring in soft skills, especially when we talk about customer service. It's not black and white that you have a one procedure, but the conversation can go multiple ways, and that's where I was looking like, okay, so how to bring a little bit behavior change in the learning, and yeah, that's again how it went.
So
Yeah.
when you said you were trying to solve some kind of problem because you're already in charge of training. So
Yes.
what's the gap you perceived? What was getting in the way?
Yes. So we had, how to say it? It's actually now I've learned that it's a quite a typical gap what we are talking about here, and that is that we have a training and then we have the real life, and during the training we provide a lot of information because of course we want to prepare them for everything, and then for the learner it was that, okay, I've had this training now 3 weeks, I got so much information, but actually I have no idea how to apply this information or what to do with this information, and therefore there was this gap between the real life where you have to make the decisions and then all this information that was given in the training.
Mm.
And that was really the gap that I was looking like, okay, so how to bring in the real life more into training, so to build the confidence, so before I really start to do customer service, I know at least that I'm able to make some decisions, or I'm able to use the information I learned and apply this on my job.
Okay. So how did you find out about me? How did you find out about this program? What was your
Oh, this is actually, it's
gateway?
quite a, yes. So I found you on YouTube, and I still remember as well, it was quite a funny story. So I found you on YouTube, and then I saw that, oh, you're active also in LinkedIn. So I started to kind of look the both channels, and I remember it was beginning of this year when you sent me then like, hey, I've seen your name around, or like you say, like, okay, let's connect. And for me, it was like, wow, this is so cool. And I remember I came to work and I was like, oh, I'm feeling like a teenager, you know, the idol is reaching out to you. And then I was like having a proper laugh with my colleague. And I think that's a really, yeah, I remember as well. And one of the first things that I found from you was the podcast, and you were talking about subject matter experts and how to deal with them, and that was like, I was like, oh, I can relate to this. And then from there I was like, okay, what else do you have? And then I was like, oh, tell me more about the scenario things you're doing here. And then from the moment we were connected in LinkedIn, I saw you posted that you're gonna do this training or cohort, and I was like, okay, it's getting quite interesting. And that's, I think it's just like one step really led to another one.
So it was over time so that's interesting that the first thing that really got you interested was working with subject matter experts, because
I think that was because I'm creating content, and that was also like, well, we can have challenges with subject matter experts, and you have, and I think it's a so common thing as well, or I've been hearing this quite a lot, that there's a one thing what they're saying, like, oh, we need this and this and this, and then it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense, or do we really need all of this in this training? So these are the challenges, and if you have a dominating person, then it's like you have the personalities, the context, and then and I was like, okay, YouTube, help me. What can I do here?
That's awesome. So okay, so now let's talk about you working through the program, because I think one of the cool things is that you and it's I think it's a cool trait to have is you're one of those people that when you see something and you're told to do it, you will be like, even if you don't believe in it all the way, you'll be like, okay, I'll try that. And that's awesome. And that's absolutely awesome, because as far as I'm concerned, this is new for a lot of people. So talk to me through the program. What when you got started, what did you first learn that you thought were like, okay, this is different, or what surprised you about what we were going through in those 6 weeks?
Okay, so like what was interesting for me was that every time when we had this online session and you went through the information, I was like, oh yes, I understand. Yes, makes sense. But then when it came to the point that you have to apply it, and then I was like, oh, how I'm gonna do this? And I think that was actually the main challenge. And maybe you noticed as well, then I came back to you kind of like, hey, I'm not quite sure, like the last week you spoke about this, but what do you actually mean about it? Or like, so it's kind of like coming to do it. And also it is really it's a storytelling, and it's a different approach. And I think I fell into the loophole as well. I just couldn't figure out what are the main points to put in the story. So to put everything in, but like the key points. And I think that was my struggle as well in the beginning, so how I'm gonna do it, so to bring my context in. So I know that my learners are working over the phone. Then my first idea was, I'm gonna just make a scenario and create like a one phone call. But then the next step was that I literally made every silly decision into decision, which just doesn't make sense. And then it's just like tiring the brain capacity on maybe not so valuable points.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the shift came. So it's, instead of having only one call as a scenario, I had the multiple calls, and then each call had like two or three decisions only. So that was a really like a learning for me to get to that point, or to understand like how to put this together. And another thing, what was I think definitely different, was how to interview the practitioners. And I think that's when you say like, I really wasn't sure how to do it. So, and I was a little bit postponing it like a bad student, like, oh, I don't know how to do it, I'll put it on the side. And then I came to the point, I was like, okay, I'm missing a piece of information. And I think for me to put it all together, I have to do the interview. And it was really funny to do it the first time. At the same time, once I did the interviews, then I saw like, okay, it really is matching the storyline, or it is bringing the story in. So so that was different.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good. Good. So it's kind of interesting, because I always talk about you're trying to get you're talking to people who don't understand what you do, and then you're trying to get them to tell you a story, and some of them don't know how to do that. And I mean, when you start, you don't know how to do that, right? So you're
learning as well. And I know you gave some really good tips in terms of like when doing the interviews, that I tend to as well fill the silence, and that's the worst thing to do, because then I will give my own thoughts. And that was really like, I have to kind of hold myself back. So it was a little bit like learning also how to interview for this kind of content. Yeah. So it's not,
Good.
it was only not scenario-based learning, but like kind of even in a bigger picture. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It's funny because I think some people really try to avoid talking to subject matter experts because they don't have the skills. So I'm glad that you brought that up because you have to practice, right? Like these
It
things.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
I agree.
So your story for your scenario, what are you trying to, you said behavior change. What's the behavior you want to change? What are you doing?
Oh, so the behavior change. So, well, one of the aim was to build the confidence or to give the learner the chance to make decisions. But then we have always a big thing. So when we are dealing with customers, am I focusing on the quality or am I focusing on my key performance indicator? So the quantity. So I do have, or like the learners, they need to meet the KPIs, and then the biggest challenge, especially in the beginning, is to find the balance. So what I'm going to focus on it. And the good thing about the customer service, or not the good thing, but the interesting part is that it's not always black and white, that it's one answer and that's the right answer. And so the gap what we had was that quite many people that come to our field, they're more focusing on the customer service, but the company's approach is more that, okay, the service needs to be there, but it's not the main focus point. That we need to also bear in mind the quantity. And like in our field, so we are dealing with flight tickets or in aviation, and sometimes we are not giving good news to the customers. So therefore, straight away, the customer service element will go down and you have to focus on the procedure. So it was really to bring in the balance. So when the learner is going through the scenarios or decisions, that they will see also that it's not always black and white. Also, sometimes you might make the right decision, but it may not have a good outcome, even though it's a right decision. So to bring the confidence in that, okay, mistakes can happen. Not always we have only one size fits all, that you might have this is okay and this is also okay, or all the options are not okay, but you have to go with them. So that was really it was aimed to bring the confidence and to show that it's not always right or wrong. There are options in between. And
Awesome.
yeah.
So you said confidence as far as just knowing that the two need to be in balance, and then just talk
So
to me more about that.
yeah, so perhaps I've got really in that. So confidence in terms of like making a decision. So when I've done the decision and I see the outcome, so out of the options I have, so I see the outcome, and I know it's not going to be a good outcome for the customer, but at the same time, that's the only way we can deal with it. And to put the context in is when we talk about flight tickets, they can be very restrictive. So meaning that it's non-refundable, no changes are possible. And at the same time, if the customer has paid a lot of money for it, it's not going to be good news from us. And for a learner to say like, okay, but it is only option from my side. I can't do anything better. I can only give the empathy, but that's it.
Yeah.
And you go through this, and another element what we have is that there can be also social pressure, so that you're new on the job, you have experts around, everybody's very fast with the systems, and then and there is this new starter who has like still learning the systems, how to look up the flight tickets, or like how is the aviation rules, what I need to apply, plus the customer service. So that's another element that I try to bring in, is that you might have this super awesome team around, but everybody can make mistakes, and just to bring the humanity in, that it's okay, mistakes are okay, learn from them, be confident to make a decision. And turning and coming to the behavior change, then some of the behavior, especially when we talk about customer service, and I think there's also culture difference, is that when we speak about customer service in North America, it's very high level, which again, like, is not the aim in my company or in our field. So it's more like, okay, we are customer service focused, but not on the level what you would see in the North America. And so to bring this kind of cap as well, that when people are starting, they're like, okay, thank you so much, and this and this, and then it's kind of like, but that's not the strategy we have. And
Mm-hmm.
so to bring the little bit shift here as well. So
Yeah.
it's a really to that, yes, we are not forgetting the customers, but it's not the main focus. So that was
Yeah.
like the behavior change. Yeah.
That's very cool. And it's kind of interesting because I think that a lot of companies would love to be talking the language you're talking, Talvi, but they just don't know how to actually undo some of those norms that people come in with and assumptions.
Yeah,
I gotta
and that's,
say,
yeah,
you know.
and it's so interesting. Well, that's adult learning as well. People come in and they bring their it worked out previously. I'm going to
Yeah.
apply it here as well, but it not may fit with the culture or with the. I think this actually is very like not with the culture, but business decisions. What the
Yeah.
company has done. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's well done. And gosh, I wish you guys could see. I got to experience Talvi's training that she designed, and like, you know, I gotta say, you took what we showed you, and then you just like turned it up 10x because you added the contextual things from your workplace and the activities you guys are. Anyways, they're super awesome. Hopefully, one day it just gets out to the world.
Thanks.
So okay, so walk me through your process, how you because you had some hang like delays and some things, but as far as your process, what did that look like for
Okay,
development?
so it took me. I think it's also good to know that it really took me some time.
Yeah.
We started in March, didn't we?
Yeah.
And now we are end of October,
Yeah.
and so it's a good kind of half a year. And so when I started this, I had an idea that okay, this what we could do, and then as we went by, it changed a little bit.
Mm.
Um, but then so it took me some time to kind of get a clear idea how to do it or what's the storyline. Once I had that, then I started to look, okay, what are the key problems that should be in the learning when people are making decisions. And that was quite interesting, because then I did some research with my colleagues in our quality assurance team to see like what are the main problems and like what they come across. So based on that research, I then kind of made potential questions or decisions, and the options I put there as well. It took me some time to kind of find um, not this kind of silly that very obvious right answer, but a little bit like, okay, it can be this, it can be this, and it can be this, and all three could be potential options. But of course, they're not may not have the best or the similar approach. So one of them is the right approach we want to have, and then the other ones are like the consequences what these options give are not what we of course want to have it. So yeah, so I did I got a list of questions, and then we came to the point when I think you advised as well that okay, test your questions with the learners and see how they perceive it. So I took then two new starters, and I tested the questions with them. And when I start then testing it, then first approach was like, oh, this is easy. And so I was a little bit concerned, like, okay, so maybe the options I took are a little bit too straightforward. But then the best part was that once we finished the questions and I started to look their answers, they were quite off. So meaning that they were not the ones that as a company we would like to have, or the behavior over the phone that we would like to have agents to do, but um, they went, I would say, with their own past experience, what I think like what could sound good or like what would be the obvious answers, but not necessarily the approach we want to have it. So that was a really good crown for me to see that okay, I'm actually on the right track, which is a little bit funny because then of course it's also like, oh, there's a really big gap that needs to be taken
Yeah.
care of because these are my two new learners and they are completely off track when it comes to decision
Ooh.
making. So yeah, so that was a quite interesting one. And then from there we started to build, right?
So
And Actually, no, there were summer interviews as well. So now it's been like so long. So I'm like, okay, how was
Yeah,
it again?
yeah. But what's really cool is I think that you followed the process and you didn't build anything until you.
Yeah, I
So how did you
really,
find that? Were you itchy? Did you want to build?
I was, and I think at that time, I think John was already building, or I think, and that was a social pressure for me. I was like, oh my god, I'm not building anything, or it's a creative process. Yeah, it's messy, and it can be frustrating. Like, okay, I have no idea how I'm gonna put this all together, and then at some point I was like, okay. I think there's a really nice saying like how to eat an elephant, like bite by bite or piece by piece. And then I really took this approach. I was like, okay, I'm not gonna overthink. I'm just gonna go step by step. And actually in the end it all came together. So it was, I think maybe I put a little bit like a blind trust in you. I was like, okay, I'm just doing it. I'm gonna see how it's gonna work out.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those questions, that's what I loved is that those questions that you were testing with your learners, that was on paper, right?
That was a yeah,
You're
yeah.
giving
So
a
I did
quiz.
yeah, that's exactly. So I had them in the same room, and of course, it was they did not have all the context because once I got ready, then the learner has the situation presented where the question comes up,
Hmm.
and so I said as well, okay, I'm gonna explain you what's the situation, and then once I went through like the explanation, I said, and now have a look on the question, I don't know, 3. And then they read the question and I was like, okay, make a choice. What would be, in your opinion, the best approach? And
Fabulous.
that worked out really well. And I must say, for me, like I said, it really gave kind of like a confidence that, okay, I'm in the right track in terms of like that there is a problem. We have new learners, they are missing this approach, so it needs to be put out there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So then when you started building,
Mhm.
um, so how did that go?
Oh, uh,
What
I
was your
think,
major takeaway lesson? Like, as far as like now reflecting back on that process, what
yeah.
was something
So
that you were like, oh, I wish I did that differently? Or
yeah, so I definitely made it harder than it had to be, or like it could have been easier.
yeah, why do
So
you say that? About what?
yeah, so how I did. So when I started to develop, it took me some time as well, like how to figure out the look and like I think it comes a little bit like to the design, like with the colors, the backgrounds, how it is. Um, all coming together and the layout. And then the biggest mistake here was that then I started to, so I used Articulate storyline, and instead of creating a template and reusing the template, I created every time a new slide with new options. So it was painful.
I mean,
And we were in touch as well, and I think you saw my pain. I was like, it's going so long. So definitely advice here is to take the time and figure out the templates and then go from there, because otherwise it's painful. It really is.
and it's easy to do templates, right? Because the scenarios are really a repeat of situation, question,
Yeah,
right? So but I gotta say that the final product turned out. Are you proud of it?
I am. I'm very proud of it. It's like there's no shame or like no like shyness here. It's kind of like I did it.
Yeah.
um, but it's also it was quite interesting. So in September, I was literally every day, like I would say, good majority, 80% of my day, my focus was on building the content or putting it all together. So I kind of like I guess I spent too much time on it in terms of like I didn't see anything else anymore. And then end of September I went for holidays, so I was a little bit away, and then I had another travels in between. So literally, it was 3 or 4 weeks I didn't see the project,
Mhm.
and then now this week I returned, and I was like, oh, it looks good. so but it's nice to have it, this pride that I created something. I'm happy about it, and of course I'm still working on some of the final feedbacks to get it kind of as smooth as possible. But yeah, I'm very happy about it. And I do think that I made it much bigger than it was supposed to be. Um, yes. So that's another thing. So I really struggled to kind of like, I think in the beginning, so the creative part was very messy because I didn't know like how to bring it all together. And then suddenly it was so big. And then when I was producing it, and I was like, oh God. So it's been ups and downs. And then like some days I was like super motivated. I was like, oh, exactly. I know how to get on with the project. And then of course some days I was like, oh God. And I think during the weeks as well when we had the sessions, um, I like it was kind of like I was like, okay, I think I got it. I think I got it. And then maybe 2 weeks later, I was like, now I got it actually.
Mm.
So it was kind of good to be in the learner's shoes for a while and feel the struggle.
Um,
Yeah,
did you find the sessions helpful?
they were. And what helped me was I think I took quite learner's approach. I even took it with me. So I made like a notebook and I took actually notes, like just to kind of like structure it for myself, like the process. And also like later on that I could redo it again. So if I'm going to start with a new project, that I have the steps. So I really tried to kind of make a structure for myself.
Mhm.
And then what really helped was, like I said, usually when we had the session, I was like, yeah, it makes sense, took my notes. And then when I started to actually do things, I was a little bit like, ooh, what is happening? How can I do it? But the sessions were recorded, so I could go back. And that was quite helpful as well. And it's really, I think the combination, yeah, looking back the recordings, my own notes, and well, quite often, if there were some questions, you were always there. So we could either talk them
Mm.
through in the next session before we start with the new content. So I think it all came together in the end. Or I would say the support was always there. And in that sense, I think it was really good. And then it really came to the point like, okay, now create something or like put it all into practice.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I noticed is that you very much applied every single week. And every single week you came back saying, I tried this, I applied,
Yeah.
it hit reality, your reality. How do
Yeah.
you, and then now you have to adjust and you say, Anna, this isn't working the way you said it would, or, this is my context. And I think a lot of times, we get a lot of guides and stuff, but
Yeah.
even in the interview, right, you have to use your own context and how do you add that, right? So
Yeah, and that was I think that was also like one of the challenges, like exactly like how to take this and curate like into my context. So it was a challenge on its own.
yeah.
But it was really like at the same time, if I think back now, it was more enjoyable challenge, or it was quite an interesting as well because I remember we spoke about it like, well, it's a storytelling, and I felt at some point I'm like really writing a script here. It's not like the e-learning I've done so far. So mainly what I've done so far is in the procedure. So it's kind of like a different approach. And so it was kind of like interesting and challenging to try a different approach. And of course, different is not always like the easiest, or so
Mhm.
that's where the challenge comes in. But all in all, if I think about it back, then I think majority of the time it was like a positive and excitement, and not like crying in the corner like, oh, how can I do this?
And it's funny because I think those are, and I remember us talking about this, how this is like a different skill set that, when was the last time you wrote a story? Like, probably.
Exactly, yeah. And I remember myself thinking of it like, oh my god, this is completely out of my normal life or normal approach. So when I last time did like this, and it's a little bit like you create a story, you create dialogues, and it's like, and I got quite like a creative, or like I was like, okay, I'm gonna think of the characters, like this is this character, what's his name, how he's gonna look like, and what's the character's approach, and it's different. It's not like as a for me, it's not the e-learning I've done before. Yeah,
Yeah. And it's
yeah,
very, and even I gotta say, like, even for me, and I'm not even the learner, but because you created these characters and they are their own, you really thought that through. It makes it very engaging. You're in it, right? And It's super fun.
That's
It's,
that's good.
and I think that's one of the other things that we picked up as, because Ryan, my partner, also looked at it because he's like obviously super proud, right? Um,
uh,
is just how much he's like, she had so much fun with this. You can tell that you put yourself in the project, and that's like amazing, because I think those things last. They last, you know.
And
That's
well,
it.
I can say here as well that Ryan was the one who gave me the tip that, hey, what are you doing with your templates? Like, and I remember you said as well, but like sometimes it is like you talk it through, and then it's like, yeah, it's very good what you're telling me. Yep, 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 of course. And then I start to do it. Nope, I'm gonna create every slide separately, and I spend 3 hours on creating a slide, you know. And then I think when I had the chat with Ryan, then that was when the penny dropped that, okay, what I've been doing, like I could make it easier.
Yeah.
And that was a really, I think that was kind of like a step, again, learning curve for me, and like kind of a step ahead that, okay, so like the last part of the project that went much faster than the beginning part. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
it was fun creating and the dialogues. And yesterday I asked my partner to do it as well, because he's not in the business, he's not in the industry, and for him it was quite entertaining. So I think that's also good.
Yeah, that's great, because I
Yeah.
mean, imagine like, I gotta be honest, imagine most e-learning out there, and you never want to be like, hey, do you want to go through this PowerPoint online deck? Like, nobody wants to read your bullets, but this
Yeah,
is,
I have. Yeah,
right, this is an experience, right?
it is. That's actually so true. Like, yeah, like I have my free time, and then someone is asking, like, "Hey, I created the e-learning on PowerPoint. Do you want to go through?"
See all
No.
my see my bullets fly in.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, that's actually so true. Yeah, true.
So
Yeah.
it's cool. So you're like, hey, step into my world for a bit and pretend you're somebody else.
And yeah, and then he was like, "Oh, this is really cool. So how long did you do it?" And I was like, "Since March." And he's like, "Oh God."
Yeah.
That was quite also eye-opening. It takes time
Yeah.
to create it. Yeah, yeah.
So, okay. So, as far as if you could give advice to new students, say they're coming in, what's your advice? Do you have any details?
Ah, patience. um, I would say, well, it sounds a little bit funny because we are always taught question everything. Like that's the education system, like question and question. But I must say, sometimes it's perhaps good to go with a little bit like a blind faith. That okay, I'll see where it's gonna take me, and to really like to take it step by step, because it can be overwhelming to start to think that I think if I would have thought of on the first day that what I have to do for this project, it would have freaked me out, because it was it yeah, it really is, it is a quite a big project to put together, especially if you're starting from the zero and there's um, no previous experience. So therefore I think it can be quite terrifying, so to really kind of zoom in, or like just to focus on the small steps in the beginning, and then it just comes gradually, it falls together. So I think that's kind of, I would yeah, take it, no pressure, like it's like it comes together slowly, but it will come together. So perhaps like that would be the advice, because I know myself that I can get frustrated if I don't know how it comes together, and or if I don't see the bigger picture, and then yeah, so
Step by
relax,
step.
keep calm and carry on. That's really like what it is.
Have some
Yeah,
faith. Have some faith.
have some faith. Yeah.
Try things you haven't tried before. No, it's
That's
gonna
a
be.
very like strong advice, eh? Kind of like, yeah, jump over the cliff, have faith.
So, what has been the response so far? Because I know you've shared it with people. You're when are you launching it for officially, like full on?
So it will be, the plan is now in next 2 weeks. At the moment, I'm still gathering feedback to get some, yeah, just to really to do the fine tuning that it all um, is as ready as possible. And of course, it can be the question as well, like how good is good. So I've kind of set myself deadline 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and at the moment I'm testing then with various people. Um, so some of the stakeholders who, let's say, sponsor the project in terms of money and the time, and then of course with the quality team who are then aware of the procedures, so to make sure that am I still online? What I'm advising there, and then um, let me think. What was sorry, my colleague just walked in, and now I got lost.
It's
got
totally
lost.
fine. So you're testing it, you're launching it in 2 weeks, and
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Oh, and now I'm testing again with new learners because they are the best. I think best ones to try out, because if it's making sense to them, was it challenging, and I'm just waiting their feedback now. So it's quite exciting,
Yeah,
and
fabulous.
and then I will do the fine tuning, and then it's ready to go.
I'm
And it's also
excited for you.
and it's quite fun as well, that even though that, like you said in the beginning, it's like a one-man show here, but at the same time for this project, I got the ideas from the quality team, and I've done some voiceovers, and I used various colleagues with various accents. So I have actually a lot of people involved in this project, even though they perhaps don't even see that they are that much involved, and they are. So it's really nice team effort as well in that sense. Yeah.
I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I never considered it that way. I always say, oh, one person solo team, but you've brought in so many people to make this like real and contextual. And
Yeah.
yes, all the people with the accents and the characters that you've developed are so, I love them. One of them has a Polish accent, by the way. It's so
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, okay, this is funny. But actually, probably this person is from Moldova, or like it's not the Polish lady. But we have a very international team, and it was a really advantage to have all these accents. And and there was a funny thing as well. So one of the characters did not quite have the right accent, so I had a person from a different nation trying to put the effort in to get the accent right, and it was so good. Or like it, I think that was the fun part of it. So it was, yeah,
Those
good.
are really authentic. I think that's one of the things, is especially when that's one of the challenges, that's the context you bring in, is that you will encounter people that you can't understand necessarily, or don't speak the same dialect, right? That's
Yeah,
so good that you could do that, because
yeah,
it's
that
about listening too, right?
it is, and it's not that you cannot always get the high level of the language you are speaking. So, and plus over the phone, so you can have like a different difficulties on the connection, or yeah. So I think I was very happy to have all these accents coming in, and yeah, and it was great to do it as well. Or we had like a quite fun with recording it, and also my colleagues, I just say like, hey, I'm doing this, can I borrow your voice? And all of them were like, kind of like, yeah, sure, without actually even knowing what I'm going to do with their voice. So
That's
it's,
awesome. Blind
so
faith.
we could just go with the blind trust here.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's fantastic. I'm really excited for you to launch this, because and I hope people see it and see how much, not only just, you don't care about all the work that you put in, as long as it goes out there, has impact, right?
But I think also, I I think because I enjoyed it a lot, but I also got a lot of support from you. I must say, like it was so when we had the talks, like later on as well, after the content was over, and like when it came to the work, and then I could kind of ask you like, what is the like how what's the best approach? Like, could that work out? Um, then I must say, like I got a lot of motivation from you, and I think that's where the kind of the beer support is coming in, or the body system is coming in as well. So it was actually, yeah, now coming back to your previous question, like um so when I say that, oh, I took the notes and I watched the recordings, but actually you really filled in the body part here as well. And I think that was not only like the technical like expertise, but quite often like emotional side. And so I think that's important, or like that
Yeah.
really kept me going. And then, yeah, so it was, thank you very much.
Oh, thank
And
you.
still,
It
so
was a pleasure.
it's like it's been hard work, but it's like been supported a lot, and it's been fun, and yeah, and the accents.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you so much. I hope you guys got a lot of value from that. The fact that, this is a journey, and it takes time to produce quality work. But gosh, when you invest your time and you commit, it's done. So,
It's worth
this
it.
is awesome. Thank you so much, Talvi.
Thank
Yeah.
you.